Oh, I didn't see you there. Welcome back to Mason Explains History. On today's episode, we'll be covering the beginning of World War II. The First World War took a toll on the world and forced everyone to change their worldview to a more cynical and depressing point of view. This led to the heavy oppression and questioning of democracy and capitalism. Everything seemed to be on a downward slope. As a consequence, some turned towards nihilism and hedonism, the belief in complete pointlessness of existence and the rebellion of old morals. That sounds a lot like kids nowadays, you know? Except for when they're saying it, they're usually holding one of these.
A USB?
This new hedonistic view gave rise to the Lost Generation, a group of American writers who fled to Paris away from the bourgeois decadence of America. These authors included Ezra Pound, E.E. Cummings, Ernest Hemingway, and my main man, Andrew Frye. No, that's not right. He's way older than that. Following the First War, most countries were on the ropes. Both Britain and France relied heavily on war guilt payments from Germany just to keep their economies afloat. But meanwhile, Germany was fading fast and soon became unable to make their payments. As a result, the Weimar Republic printed a metric butt-ton of money, leading to inflation of epic proportions, to the point where 1 English pound was the equivalent of 10 trillion German marks. A German man named Gustav Stresemann eventually worked out a plan with William Dawes of the US. This plan stated that the US would loan money to Germany, who would then be able to pay Britain and France, who would then be able to pay the US. The US became the world's creditor and was seemingly unstoppable. Oh, this is taking me too long? I should do less detail? Okay, thank you. After this, the Great Depression started and everything collapsed. After this, socialism started looking better and better. Some places transitioned from capitalism to a mixed economy with some socialistic ideals. This was called the coming of a welfare state. A big portion of the formation of this idea can be accredited to John Maynard Keynes. I'm starting to like my name more and more. And his general theory of employment, stating that the government should use interventions to stabilize the economy. The first of this was take currency off the gold standard. Second, spend money in a depressed economy. Third, implement or increase government work programs. 4, limit overproduction. 5, regulate systems of finance. 6, provide generous social benefits funded by progressive taxation. Some called this creeping social... Oh, too much. I got it. Italy! Mussolini stepped into the power of Italy as an ultra-nationalist and created the Black Shirts. When Marxists were causing trouble, Mussolini marched the Black Shirts to Rome and stopped the riot, and the king gave them power to reform. Mussolini's role started mild but quickly became very radical. Mussolini later published a fascist doctrine that introduced 1, supremacy of state over individual, 2, glorification of struggle and war, 3, one single strong leader, and 4, hatred of equality. That sounds like a history class I have, you know. Supremacy of a teacher, glorification of stress and suffering over homework, a single all-powerful leader, and didn't have one for the 4th one, so... sorry for that tangent, Mr. Mussolini. Frye. Argentina. Argentina was originally leaning towards the Nazis. But after a coup staged by Juan Perón, they became neutral. Japan! When Japanese leaders agreed to limit the Navy, the military began to act on its own accord, and several political figures were assassinated. Military commanders took power led by Hideki Tojo, and his militant totalitarianistic ideals were built on these principles. Emphasis on the decadence of the West. Oh crap, I forgot to write the rest of that one.
Guess who?
Hitler joined the Nazi Party and quickly became their leader, where the party rapidly grew and attracted attention of many different figures. They eventually staged a coup, which failed, and he was placed in jail for 5 years, where he wrote the infamous Mein Kampf. The Nazis' power and numbers grew as Hitler created the Brown Shirts, a group of people meant to take out his political opponents. With the help of Joseph Goebbels' genius propaganda strategies, the Nazis grew further and eventually adopted Mussolini's principles with some additives. Number one, they blamed Germany's problems on communism and mostly Jews. 2, to renounce the arm limits from the Versailles Treaty. And 3, wanted to establish a policy where he could attack whoever he wanted. Though the Nazi Party was popular in the foreground, in the background they led a life of oppression. Mostly the Jews, but eventually it spread to other parties such as the Gypsies and the handicapped. In one instance, called the T4 program, 50,000 handicaps were gassed and killed. This means opposers like Martin Niemöller, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and Karl Barth were forced to flee or be imprisoned. One of these figures, specifically Bonhoeffer, was way more active in his opposition through inciting the Nazi Party and then getting caught and then getting executed. So it wasn't that effective. It was only 2 weeks before the war ended. With the Nazi power at its height, Hitler began raiding, starting with Rhineland and Austria, where world leaders quickly realized that this was a real threat. And on September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and the Second World War officially began. And this concludes this episode of Mason Explains History. Until next time, wear a face mask.